The word toxic is being thrown around a lot these days. We hear about toxic positivity, toxic masculinity, toxic workplace culture. The word toxic has basically become a prefix to anything we don't like. And most of the examples of behaviors or patterns or statements that I see under these headers, I usually agree with them. As in, I agree, like, yeah, that's not helpful to hear. That's not helpful to do. We should probably try to stay away from that. But there have been a few things that I've seen labeled as toxic that have actually been very helpful to me on my own personal mental health journey, usually with a few modifications. This is sort of a hear me out type situation, and I would probably say that for every example. But not everything that gets labeled as toxic is bad. There are a few things that I think have been lumped in with this toxic, this anti-toxic movement that actually don't belong there and can be very beneficial for our efforts to improve our own mental health. And so I'm going to share with you today four, quote, toxic behaviors that I engage in regularly that I have found have actually improved my mental health. Now, it's possible that I'm just a very strange person and this would not work for most people. I don't know. You guys will have to tell me. I'm just going to give you some information. You can decide what to do with it. The first toxic behavior that sometimes helps to improve my own mental health, I'm starting with the most controversial one, just so you know, is invalidating my own feelings. Hear me out. I know that sounds horrible, and I don't mean all the time. But the thing is, the idea that like all feelings are valid and all feelings are important and all feelings are communicating something essential to you, I feel that that is a privilege of a person who does not have a cyclical mood disorder to say that. Because what about when we have feelings that are completely contradictory? Or what about when we have feelings that we know with 100% certainty are baseless, not grounded in reality, and inaccurate? Because I have days, even today, like I used to have these days much more frequently when my life was kind of a disaster, frankly. I have a pretty good life now in all like outwardly observable logistical type ways anyway. And yet I still have days where I wake up and I just have this feeling like my life sucks and I'm a loser and nothing I do matters. I don't think I should validate that feeling because I think, frankly, that that feeling is kind of stupid. And I have to say that to myself because my brain does not always respond properly to inputs. I can have good things that mean nothing to me, at least for an acute period of time. I can feel sad when nothing is wrong. I can miss people who aren't gone. And sometimes I need to say to myself, brain, no. Just no. We are not going to entertain that today. You're wrong. Like, that's not a valid feeling. This is, you're having a neurotransmitter issue right now. Something's kind of jumbled up in there. Things aren't working quite right. And you need to actually not take this feeling seriously. Because in the past, I didn't know that. I used to think every feeling I had was an effective and accurate guide towards some kind of action that needed to be taken. So when I had those periods of life, when I'm like, my life sucks, I hate everything and I hate myself, I would respond to that feeling by trying to change everything in my life and basically throwing away everything I had up until that point. And then I get like a year down the road and I realize, oh, I threw away a bunch of stuff that actually mattered to me and was helpful. So I do not take every feeling I have seriously. Sometimes I call a stupid feeling a stupid feeling. I know most therapists would tell you not to do that. But again, I think I think that comes from, I kind of hate to say it this way, but this is what comes to mind. I think that comes from a privileged perspective of someone who has a brain that responds properly to inputs. Mine doesn't, not all the time anyway, and maybe yours doesn't either. And if that's the case, some of your feelings are not winners. Some of your feelings like don't belong and they're wrong and they are based on nothing. And you should consider calling them what they are and just doing your best to move on from them rather than entertaining them or taking them seriously. The second so-called toxic behavior that I engage in is working hard all day long with few breaks. Hear me out. I promise I won't say that every time. I know that's going to get old really fast. When I say working hard all day long, I don't inherently mean at my job. Now, like in the season of life I'm in right now, where I have a relatively new business that I'm trying to get off the ground, sometimes it does literally mean that. It hasn't always literally meant that, though. Work isn't just your employment. Work isn't just your career. The way I define work is progress towards your goals in life. So if you have fitness goals and you go to the gym, that's work. Even if you're not getting paid for it, it's work. I mean, it's a physically hard thing to do. It doesn't always feel awesome in the moment. That's work. If you want to have your house more clean and more organized, and you go home and you work on your house, that's work. So work is anything you do where you're taking progress towards your goals. And I would then define non-work as leisure activities that serve no secondary purpose. Like I'm not doing this to achieve something or accomplish something. I'm just doing this because it feels good, because I need a break and I need a period of time where like I don't have to worry about anything. The common wisdom around work and non-work is that you should engage in sustained periods of work that are like maybe 30 to 45 minutes long, and then take like a 15-minute break where you engage in non-work. I have not found this to be an effective way of organizing my life. I prefer to do all of my work in one big long chunk of the day with little to no breaks if possible, for two reasons. Number one is I have found that once I start working, I don't really mind continuing to work for a long period of time. But the second is when I stop working, I really don't want to start working again. And so if I take a break like on the hour, if I took a short break after every therapy client I see, for example, it's actually really hard for me to like get up out of my chair and go get the next client if I've been like playing poker on my phone or watched a YouTube video or something like that. I find that it reminds me of Newton's first law, honestly. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, and an object at rest tends to stay at rest. Once I start resting, I don't want to get back into motion. But once I'm in motion, I don't mind staying in motion. So I try to have one long period of the day, might be 10, 11, 12, 13 hours long, of work. Now again, I'm not at my job that whole time. That starts in the morning before I go to work. That starts with physical activity and planning and stuff like that. And it might end with like, well, it used to end with making dinner. My wife thankfully has taken that off my plate. But it ends with, I get home, I do a couple more things right when I get home. And then I set a hard cutoff time, and once I'm done, I'm done. I am not going to resume working for the rest of the day. Because I've also found that when I have a short little break, it doesn't really do much for me. It doesn't really recharge me because I'm just kind of dreading having to go back to work. And I can't fully engage with the break because I know that I'm not done. So I have a schedule that at least most therapists, most mental health professionals would look at and say, this guy's nuts and he's on the path to burnout and that's never going to work. And that has been the exact opposite of my experience. And when I've had schedules that had a lot of breaks and free time and unallocated time in them, that is the closest I've ever come to burnout, because getting myself back into work mode when I've been out of it for a little bit drains me way more than just staying in work mode. The third toxic behavior that I engage in that I think has actually helped my mental health tremendously is putting my own needs first. I have kind of a counterintuitive rationale for this one. And I think I've said this before, but it's worth saying again, and you'll hear it from me again. I very, very strongly believe that taking excellent care of yourself, when we're talking your real self-care needs, which is things like rest, nutrition, physical activity, like taking medications or staying away from substances that really affect your cognitive performance or your emotional health. I believe that those are selfless actions. And conversely, I very strongly believe that self neglect, constantly putting yourself last and putting those things on the back burner so you can show up for other people, actually ends up being a selfish act. The reason I think this is anything you could do for another person, like for the most part, I'm sure you can think of some weird exception. Most things you can do for another person, they can theoretically do for themselves as well. You're just helping them. You're maybe making it easier or more fun or whatever. There is one thing that nobody in your life can do for themselves. And the thing that nobody in your life can do for themselves is make you be okay. And if the people in your life actually care about you and love you and value you, it affects them whether or not you are doing okay. And I really believe that one of the biggest gifts that you can give to any other person in your life is being somebody who they don't have to worry about. If you have ever seen someone kind of falling apart, really sliding back in life, and you couldn't stop them and you couldn't help them, it is one of the worst feelings in the world. It is incredibly disempowering to know I would do anything I could to help you, but there is literally nothing I can do to help you. Also, if you're a person like me who has made a commitment to a lot of people in one way or another, I have a wife and I have children. And so those statuses, that's me making a commitment to them and saying, I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to support you. I have therapy clients. I have employees. I have subscribers. I have you guys. I feel that I have made a commitment to all of you to show up as the best version of myself that I am capable of being on every single day. And I think that's one of the best things that I can give to people. And I'm the only person who can make sure that happens. So the asterisk here is I'm not just talking about like frivolous leisure time stuff. I'm not going to be like ignoring my kids to watch football and saying, "Oh, this is my need. I'm putting my need first." Watching football's not a need. But I am saying like I make time for physical fitness every morning, even if that does take away a little bit of time from my family, for example, because I believe that that's a net positive because the improvements that me spending time on my physical health creates in emotion regulation and social engagement and cognitive functioning, that 20 or 30 minutes that I spend being physically active will pay dividends throughout the day. And the net result of that is they get a better version of me. And maybe they get a little less time with me. We're trading a little bit of quantity for a lot of quality. And I think that's a good trade. So I don't say this because I think I'm the most important person in the world or something like that. Quite the opposite. I say this because I want to help people and I want to show up for people. And this is what I must do in order to achieve that. The fourth toxic behavior that has helped my mental health is using the gym as therapy. Now, when I say the gym, like that's in air quotes here. It doesn't have to be literally going to the gym. The gym here is just a catch-all term for being physically active. And I don't mean that we should be physically active instead of going to therapy or instead of taking medication. Like when I say using it as therapy, I mean using it as a form of therapy. I don't think there are a lot of people out there for whom being physically active will be the only thing they need in order to be mentally healthy. But I do believe, and really I know because research strongly supports this, your brain will not be as healthy as it is capable of being if you don't work in semi-consistent physical activity. So the gym absolutely is a cornerstone of my mental health. It is a non-negotiable for me, part of my therapy and part of my journey. And I am not capable of being a mentally healthy person without at least semi-regular physical activity. And it's noticeable. Like my wife can tell. She can tell by my mood. There's been times it's kind of like her version of me being like, "Oh, is it that time of the month?" She'll be like, "You haven't worked out in a while, have you?" I can tell. I think maybe you should, get back into that. Like I get irritable. I get just very like flat. Like I don't emote much. I'm not a super emotive guy anyway, I guess, but it definitely is less. I get really scatterbrained. I get forgetful. I'm a different person without the gym. And so, I see a lot of memes about like, "Oh, I don't need therapy. The gym is my therapy." And everyone's like, "Oh, this is so toxic." And it's like, yeah, if you're doing it instead of, yeah, it's not necessarily going to take the place of having a therapist or being on an antidepressant, but can it be a cornerstone or a pillar of your recovery and of your mental health? Absolutely. And I would even take it one step further and say for most people, it's probably going to need to be because your body is your brain's home. And it is very difficult for something to be healthy when it is in an unhealthy environment. And we need to move. We need to get our heart pumping. We need to get our lungs working properly. Blood and oxygen are two of your brain's most important resources. And that's how we optimize them. We optimize them through movement and through pushing ourselves a little bit every now and then, because that's what our brains need to get these resources pumped to them that make our emotion regulation and our social engagement and our decision making and our behavioral inhibition better. So if the gym is not a part of your therapy, that's probably a big missing piece in your mental health journey and something you might want to consider adding. despite the fact that it has some cultural associations of like, bro, just lift a weight and you'll be fine. Like, no, but it does help. And it's not a black and white either or kind of thing. Okay, hopefully those weren't too controversial. Hope those made sense to you. Let me know. Let me know in the comments what your toxic behavior is that has helped your mental health. I think that will be a really fun conversation for us as a community to have. As always, take care, and I'll see you next time.